All right, it's 9:30. Let's get the party started. You guys must not have gone to U2 last night. Well, we're really excited to be here. My name's Kathy, and I'm here with my colleague Ike and our friend Rob. And I know you guys have all seen this slide, but before I get started, I'll just say that we're considering future developments. And so when purchasing software, please do that based on, please make your decisions based on what's currently available. So over the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to be talking a lot about Heroku and showing you a lot of what Heroku can do and showing things that we're really excited and passionate about that make building applications more streamlined and collaborative. And we know that you might have questions as we go along, and we would love it if you guys tweet them to Ask Heroku. We have people who built the software that you're going to see. We have some in the audience today, which is pretty exciting, and all over the world, from London to Pittsburgh, Columbus, all over the United States, and they are watching this hashtag, and they want to hear from everybody here. They couldn't be here today, so they are going to participate through this hashtag.
So there's been sort of an evolution in the DevTools industry. It used to be that there was a place to deliver your code. It's in the cloud. You put your code in the cloud, and it's delivered. Layered on top of that, more recently, we have like a lot of tools that run in the cloud and that help developers like do CI, do code quality, do automated deployments, that sort of thing, and that is great too. Dev teams definitely use tools, but those tools don't make for the team. That takes a separate construct, and we're going to talk about Heroku Teams. That's how we've layered on. Should we do the next slide? We've layered on a team structure on top of the tools. This is sort of an inverse of the tools first approach, where developers get really excited about this tool or that tool and then string them together and then sort of worry about how to work afterwards. This is where you get these enormously long readmes at the front of the repo that says, here's the tools we use, here's how they fit together, here's all the different account names. What we have done now, as you probably heard in other sessions, is integrate several of our tools to form a continuous delivery solution. We have Heroku pipelines that you may have heard about in other sessions, and they'll be discussed in the dev keynote at 11 o'clock. We have GitHub deploys. This is a way to automate deployments that's linked in with your Git workflow. Review apps, we'll show that in the demo. It's sort of a very magical way to actually run the code in a pull request before you merge it. And Heroku is the first to do this. And at this show, we're introducing Heroku CI. I will note for people in the audience, can I get a show of hands how many people here use CI as part of your development process? If you would like to test Heroku CI, it is now in private beta. So you can just go to the hashtag Ask Heroku and let us know that you'd like to be part of the private beta. We'll ask you a couple questions about stack and such, and your tool set. Okay, so we released all these great tools to our customers. These are things you're going to see demoed shortly. And we heard back, these are awesome, but we either have a team in GitHub that is constructed and we need it to integrate well. We have a team that's not solely composed of developers. We care about designers and product managers that they want to participate in the process. And they also need access on their level to these tools and resources. And we'd like an integrated workflow around the team. What that means is basically a team owns the resources you're using. It owns the environments, what we call Heroku apps, in which the code can execute. It owns the workflow process for those apps. That's the Heroku pipeline. And it also can own roles where you have administrators and members who can do things like add new members to the team, check billing, and have various permissions. So the goal here is to integrate the team construct with the workflow and the assets that you use in that workflow. Our customers have found that Heroku Teams, which was released, 2 months ago? About 2 months ago, has been really useful in doing this. Many of them were already using tools like continuous delivery, continuous integration. They have repos, they had execution environments, they have dev, staging, and prod, and now they have a structure where they can manage the team that operates with those workflows and assets, because at the end of the day, building software is a human process. So the more efficiently you can manage the people, the more efficiently you get the software built.
Yeah, exactly. And here's Heroku Teams. This is the Heroku Team overview page that we released last week. And you can see it's really simple, and that's on purpose. When we were building this out, we really wanted to focus on how we ourselves manage our teams, and we wanted to make those processes streamlined and easy to use so we're not getting bogged down with too much UI. And so you can see in the right-hand side, you have all the members of your team right there on this page. And imagine onboarding new people, you can easily invite them to your team. If they already have a Heroku account, they're added to this team automatically. If not, they get an email invitation, and they can click a button or click a link to join the team. And I've been in this situation a couple times when I leave companies. I still have access to repos and critical documentation for months, sometimes years later. And so that's probably not a very good situation for the company to be in. And so we made it really easy from this page to offboard people as well. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that I haven't filled this section out yet, but this area is for my favorites. And so I can add favorites or favorited apps and pipelines here so that as I onboard new people to my team, they have access to that. So instead of digging through emails, bugging my colleagues for the link to the app or the pipelines or looking in Slack, I can have that all right here. So in the demo today, we're going to show you a little bit about how a team would collaborate on a product change from ask to shipping it into production. And so we're going to do that by showing you how Heroku Teams and Heroku Pipelines works together. Have you guys used, can I get a show of hands for people that have used pipelines, Heroku Pipelines? Okay, great. Ike is going to go into a lot more detail about what these columns mean and show you how code gets from something outside of this, from source control all the way through to production. And I think probably the really beautiful thing about this is that we're minimizing surprises getting into production. So when I'm looking for new software for my team to use, I am often curious about who's going to manage the team that manages the code. And I want to find things that are very, very simple to use and that streamline the process. So let me give you a couple of examples of things that go through my head while I'm doing this. If I hire a contractor and I want them to commit code to my repo, but not necessarily have access to critical add-ons in my Heroku ecosystem, I can add them to my team and manage their role and their permissions within that seamlessly so that they can do what they need to do the tasks, perform the tasks they need to do, but not accidentally step on things that they shouldn't be stepping on. And beyond that, another example, and I am sad to say I've been in this situation a little too often, where I'm a couple days out before my GA date, before I want to launch something, and my CEO is seeing the code that we want to ship and the product that we want to change for the first time. This is a super risky situation to be in because what happens is she says, you know what, I want this change, I want this to be blue, I want this functionality to be different. And so now I'm running the risk of me and my team being up late at night trying to get her asks into the product so that we can still ship on time. And so what we'll show you in the demo is something called review apps. And review apps happen really early on in the development process. And they're used heavily by the development team, by the engineering team, to go back and forth and fiddle around with the changes that they're making themselves. But then also, I can share them with people outside my team, stakeholders, people that care about what we're building inside the team. I can share a URL to a fully constructed application that is the review app, which we'll show you in the demo. And then they can see those changes weeks before they even get into production. And the last thing I'll note here, probably not so jazzy as all of these other features, is how we handle billing. And so billing, right now, if I want to go and see how my teams of people are spending my Heroku resources, I have to go into individual applications, individual accounts, and add all of this up and all of the usage up myself manually. If I pull all of those resources into one team under one umbrella, I can, with opening up an email or clicking on a link to my invoice, I can see what team A is spending versus team B, and instead of hunting it all down.
IRL.
So let's check it out. Let's do a live demo.
Okay, so we're going to switch to live demo. I'm not nervous that we are doing a live demo.
Live demos go well all the time.
Okay, so here you have the Teams page that Kathy described. The people on the right here, those are the people on our team. The people on the left, you can see there is a pipeline, a continuous delivery pipeline called Intense Camping. And there are some apps. So if I'm on this team, these are the resources I use. Here's the people here's the resources we use, and it's pretty clear how to add resources to your team and how to add people to your team. And as Kathy said, you're going to get one bill for all this stuff, and you can actually track how many resources a team is using. And by resources, I mean how many app environments, how many execution environments, how many review apps, all that kind of stuff. How much bandwidth are you spending on CI? So say that we want to invite a team member to this team.
Let's invite Robert.
This will give whoever we invite the level of access that we want over the Heroku apps that are in this team and the Heroku pipeline that's in this team. And we're also going to say we're paying for everything that Rob wants to do on this team. Okay, and we could, of course, like most apps, we can revoke that invite if we find out that it was sent in error, sent to the wrong email address. So that's great. This is all it takes to manage your team and permissions and billing and app stuff on Heroku. And I will add also that everything you're about to see in this demo will work for Salesforce development. In this demo, we're going to demo, I think it's a Node app, is that right?
Yeah, it's a Node app.
You could equally develop in Apex, in Lightning, and you could develop against Salesforce Scratch orgs and Sandbox orgs. So for those people who are interested in that flavor, we're not demoing that because it's demoed at the Dev Keynote at 11. It's a really exciting advance for pipelines. So here will be a great quick demo to show you exactly how pipelines works. Let's go to the pipeline. This pipeline is a visualization of continuous delivery. This is continuous delivery. It sounds like a really complex concept. It's really simple. It's dev, staging, prod, moving the code from dev to staging to prod in a way that allows you to test every deployment that you make. And part of the magic that we have done, how many people here use GitHub for pull requests? Okay, so as you know, every time you spin up a pull request, every time you create a pull request, which is a feature or fix that you want to work on, you create the pull request, and then you sort of ask your coworkers how it might work for them. And they speculate, they kind of look at the code and say, oh, this seems like it would run well or not, and then you merge it into a master branch or merge it into a feature branch. What review apps allow you to do is actually test the code in the pull request, and we'll see that now. So when you make the pull request, Heroku immediately spins up a disposable environment that's identical to staging and runs the pull request code in it. So, and we've partnered with GitHub so that in GitHub itself, you'll see a link that says, hey, you made this temporary deployment, this pull request, do you want to launch it? And you can share the URL. Let's see that happen. So we have this intense camping app. Let's take a look at what it looks like in staging right now. Looks very serene, looks fine. Doesn't look very intense.
I
That's
think
nice.
I just got a request from our product manager that says we need to make it more intense.
Oh, really? I hadn't anticipated that. Okay. So let's go to the code. We're going to make a pull request. We're going to make this thing more intense.
So I'm going to edit the code right in GitHub, which I'm sure you guys do every day. And I'm just going to change this component.
So this is a GitHub pull request. We give it a title like we do because we're good programmers, even though we're editing right in the web interface. You propose the file change, and then we're going to create the pull request. So the moment we create the pull request, if you flip back to pipelines, you'll see the review app spin up. This is an exact copy of your staging environment spun up in a few seconds just to run the code in this pull request. We take the code, we build it, we deploy it, we run it. You can watch a log of all this stuff happening, but probably before we look at the log, it will be done. And then the goal here is you have a URL to this code. You can share it on Slack. You can check it out by just clicking the link in GitHub. You can send it to your product manager, your designer, the rest of the people of the team we've been talking about. Okay, so we're working on creating the app. It looks like it's probably deployed. We'll take a look. It looks very intense.
That's a lot more intense.
Okay.
I don't know why they're just still eating dinner while the bear is about to eat them.
They don't seem to be disturbed, but that's because they're such intense campers. So we circulate this around. You guys have gone through this process. You circulate around, you show it to design, you show it to your CEO. He's like, yeah, that's really going to sell. God knows why. And so let's merge that code to master.
I'm going to add a comment like a good programmer.
Yep. This is the commenting thing where previously you were talking. Actually, let's pause. See if you, we don't need to click it, but you can see up here that GitHub has cooperated with us with this little rocket thing that allows you to take a look at the review app right in line. So your team on GitHub can participate as well. What's really interesting about, you already have a team on GitHub probably, and they have the ability to edit the code and create pull requests. That may not be exactly the people that you want to do deployments. So you have a team on Heroku that probably is much the same people as GitHub, but may additionally have others who have deployment privileges or want to see billing and that sort of thing. Okay, so let's merge the pull request. And as we flip back, you'll see that the review app auto-destroys. The pull request is merged. There's no need for the review app anymore. It auto-destroys, and you stop paying for it, and it stops taking up space on the screen. You've just seen that. The Heroku pipelines will recognize that you've made a merge here to the master branch, that the code has changed. It will get the code, build it, and redeploy it to staging. It'll do this every time somebody merges a new feature in. And in fact, every time you update a review app, this will happen as well. So these URLs always reflect the current version of the code. So this is now deployed to staging. There may be other changes that went to staging. What we're doing here is integration testing. And again, other members of the team who previously didn't have access to this sort of thing can now access staging at a URL. Let's take a look at what it looks like in staging. Looks very intense.
Still pretty intense.
And this is the coolest part. When everyone's approved, when it's passed CI, there is a stage here. I'll note one thing here. If you want to pop up the pick list in, yeah, right there. You can see that under configure automatic deploys, we could say, if you wanted to, as part of this workflow, wait for CI. We didn't here just to make it go faster. So when it's time to deploy this, we promote to production. We can check and see, oh, what commits for this? Oh, yeah, I remember. This is making it more intense. And then promote it to production. That's it. And there's actually no rebuild here. We are promoting the compiled code directly to production. That avoids errors in recompilation, in rebuilds. You know that the code that you looked at staging is exactly the code that's in production. And in the time it took me to explain that, it's now deployed in production. If we open up the browser, this is the site that's live to the world. So that's continuous delivery, and that's how your team participates in it. And at each stage of these, as Kathy described, you can set permissions to decide who's able to do what. And in fact, when you have the review apps that you're using for evaluation of code that's in pull requests, you have the great availability of having contractors or others who have access to your GitHub repo, who can commit code to your GitHub repo, who you don't necessarily want to deploy to staging. They can still create review apps right from GitHub without even logging into Heroku.
Mm-hmm. So that was great. So what we just saw was a team of people working together. We got a request from our product manager who doesn't commit code. We were able to commit that code as engineers, and we were able to deploy it. And we even added Rob, who actually I want to bring Rob up right now and just talk about, you guys just saw me and Ike using it. We're from Heroku, and Rob is proof that this works in the wild out there from ZeroCater.
Yeah, so ZeroCater, we help companies and people. We make catering easy to accomplish. And anytime you have an event or you want to provide regularly scheduled catering food to your office, ZeroCater makes it easy to select from a wide variety of different options. We obviously started here in San Francisco as a tech startup, but we've expanded to Chicago, New York, DC, and recently Austin as well. And so the company has been around for about 5 years. I joined about 18 months ago. And at that time, I inherited a team of 2 other engineers, so 3 engineers for the entire company, which at the time was around 65 people, and an ailing, barely held together infrastructure that was running our applications. Everything was very difficult to do, and we were constantly running into issues on production. Everything from running out of space on the log server to the database going down, nothing but a wide variety of different issues. Anyway, and so we've continued to grow. We're up to 135 people as a company, but the engineering team still represents a very tiny fraction of that. As tech startups go, we've grown up to 11 people and 1 QA. But during that time, I was asked, from the beginning, I was asked from the CEO to accomplish 2 things. So we had to build and maintain the tools that the other teams at ZeroCater needed in order to accomplish their job and make sure that our existing customers were happy, but also build the products that ZeroCater needed in order to expand into new markets. And so this is quite a large mandate for a team that started as 3 engineers. And so the first thing I did was evaluate our tool set. Where were we spending our time? And I found that an incredibly high percentage of that was dealing with issues in production, trying to figure out why the production server was crashing, what was going on with the database server, why was it slow. And so the very first thing I did was start to migrate our infrastructure into the hands of professionals, more managed options. And so I've been working with Heroku for a long time, and so Heroku was my first and natural choice. And so here you can see that when we hired each additional engineer to the team, this is the README that we used to use in order to get engineers onboarded with our local dev environment. And it couldn't be simpler, I agree. It's super easy. And and then when we did finally, this process would often take a new engineer hours to accomplish. There was oftentimes some error that occurred as a result, whether it be user error or if the network was being a little finicky that day, something wouldn't work properly, and then you wouldn't know whether to pick it up from there, try and fix the issue, or just restart entirely, which is usually what we did. And so like I said, it would take hours to successfully get through setting up your local dev environment. And then the next step, we tried to get our engineers to deploy to production on the first day. And this README here, again, couldn't be simpler, was what we used to deploy to production. There was one command that would allow you to deploy to production, but again, there was oftentimes one error that occurred or another, and when you're trying to instill confidence in this new engineer that just started that day, and then the deploy to production fails, it doesn't actually accomplish that as much as we would like it to. And so then we have to do a little bit of live debugging on the production server in order to figure out why did the deploy fail. And more often than not, that would mean I'd have to write a post-mortem out to the company. It was not fun for anyone. And instead, as we've continued to migrate more and more of our infrastructure over to Heroku, my boss, the CEO of ZeroCater, has been very generous. He's been giving us a lot of budget. And the way I think of it is that we have more budget than time. And Heroku allows us to deploy, get engineers onboarded more quickly, to deploy more quickly, to get from idea to launch in much less time. And while Heroku is not free, it's a professionally managed service, it's still a lot less expensive than adding headcount. For example, like a dedicated DevOps person that would simply manage our infrastructure or continue to expand our infrastructure or upgrade our infrastructure. There was a reason that when I joined ZeroCater that our Postgres database was several major versions behind. It was because nobody wanted to do it. It was so risky to upgrade the database. And now with just one simple command, we can upgrade to the latest version of Postgres on Heroku, and it doesn't cause a large existential crisis to the company. And so now, if you go to the next slide, this, as Kathy was showing you, that we now use Heroku Teams. When the Heroku Teams email came in, I immediately got told on Slack by 3 of the engineers, and we were on it within 5 minutes of getting the email. Heroku Teams made it so much easier to manage the team, consolidate billing, and assign permissions to the appropriate people for the various apps that we're building. On the left-hand side, you can see the few apps and pipelines that I've favorited, but this is my real team. You can see there's the list of engineers. And so the very first thing we do is we add them to the Heroku Teams, add them to the GitHub team. They can pull a repo and make some changes to that code, and then immediately push up a pull request, and that review app is immediately available. More importantly, this has made onboarding so much simpler for new engineers because engineers will have used Heroku outside of ZeroCater. They use it on their personal projects or at previous employers. And so between the documentation that Heroku provides and their own personal experiences, they already know not only how to work with the team, but also how to get code into production using a very sort of standardized process that Heroku has developed. And so the code changes will immediately build as a review app, which has been absolutely amazing for our team. We use it in production, but we also use it when we're prototyping new ideas. ZeroCater is very big on building small little prototypes for various ideas that we're trying out. We'll literally bring customers over to the office and show them the prototype. And on several occasions, a customer has said, oh, this isn't actually quite right. This isn't what I would want. If it had this feature or that feature, it would actually be a lot better. And several times we say, oh, coincidentally, we actually have that in a review app right now. And so we can pull up the URL for that live review app that has an auto-generated URL. It's live on the internet. And we show them the review app instead. And we say, is this what you want? And they say, oh, this is actually great. Or they say, no, this is not actually quite right either. And but we're getting much higher quality, much better, higher fidelity feedback from these customers. And then, like I said, from the developer's point of view, we can boot up the review app, get it into staging, and get it into production, oftentimes within the first hour of them arriving at the office, as a result of having a more standardized, a more consistent workflow and deploy process. And so, as a result of using Heroku, we found it to be quite prescriptive, simple, and powerful. And what that means is, from a prescriptive standpoint, like I was saying, that when an engineer starts, they don't have to be taught exactly what the long series of different commands that gets their code into production does, and what each one of the various other commands that they need to learn in order to fix what happens to production when something does go wrong. Instead, the Heroku has built an environment that a lot of engineers are very familiar with. They already feel comfortable with it, and more than that, it allows them to get working and building value for ZeroCater much, much more quickly. It's also quite simple. You know, I like to say that at every opportunity, I like to use the tools that allow me to point and click my way to a better future, and that's exactly what Heroku does. That you know, I can easily add them to the Heroku team. I can manage the pipeline for the various apps. I can check out the review apps. And then finally, when everyone has approved all the way from the CEO to the product manager to the QA has approved of a particular review app, we can very quickly get it into staging. And then when the date is finally ready for that feature to go live, we can just click the promote to production. And I couldn't be happier. I have so much more faith that when I click that button, that everything is going to work as intended, as planned, as opposed to getting surprises here at the very last minute. And so everything is much more simple. And then lastly, it's very powerful. You know, while Heroku has sort of created a sort of standard environment that has very sensible and very pragmatic defaults, it also, at every time we've needed some level of customization, we found that Heroku provides those as well, that they have everything from build packs to a wide variety of different add-ons that will quickly integrate together, but more so when there's something that Heroku doesn't provide directly, that it's still quite easy to integrate with other third-party services. And since Heroku is such a namesake within the tech industry, that oftentimes they have Heroku integrations of one form or another and make it easy to work with Heroku. And so every time we've needed something that Heroku doesn't offer by default, we haven't been limited yet. And so we can either customize the environment that the application needs, or the deploy process, or the different third-party services that the application is going to rely on. And so as a result, we've been able to much more successfully get our engineers onboarded, make it easier for everyone to review the work, and have a successful launch for our products. And so Heroku has really transformed the way we work. You know, before we moved to Heroku, we were lucky to make one deploy to production per week as a result of everything being more difficult. The staging environment was locked up or something. You know, the staging environment was broken that week. But now, you know, 10 deploys to production is pretty standard, and there's weeks that we do 30 or 40 deploys to production as a result of the continuous integration and delivery environment that Heroku has set up through Heroku pipelines. And it's just much more simple and powerful than it has ever been before for my team. And so while we're still a small team, you know, like I said, 11 engineers and 1 QA, and the company is still growing, we're able to justify the budget required to continue to use Heroku because it's still a lot less expensive, and it allows us to deploy much more quickly than ever before. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Rob. And so what you guys saw today was Heroku Teams and Heroku Pipelines and a bunch of other products that we're putting together to make this suite work better together for developers. And I'm not sure if anybody tweeted any questions. You can do that right now. So we have 10 minutes if anybody has questions. And I think Natalie has a microphone that she'll pass around.
Hi. My question is, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Rob.
Oh, Rob. My question's for Rob. Sorry.
Sure.
I noticed that you had in the presentation you had a complicated dev setup. So how has that changed once you're moving to Heroku? Because we still have a series of steps that we use. We've been using Heroku since the beginning, but local development, we still have a complicated series of steps, just like you did.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'm wondering how that changed when you moved to Heroku.
Yeah, that's, I mean, there's twofold. The first one was we've gone to a more kind of microservices approach, and so each part of the application is smaller than it used to be. And so typically speaking, when an engineer is getting booted up, we have like a small feature or maybe even a small bug that is focused on one of those microservices. And so really we only have to do two things. We have to just pull the repo for that microservice, and then two, install the Heroku Postgres app, which is like a local version of Postgres, and then just pull, either some apps we pull data down and we populate it into the Heroku Postgres, but oftentimes the repo has a script to like generate some test data in there. And granted, if it's the first day and the first hour that an engineer is getting started, they're not deploying like a large mission critical feature, but oftentimes the three commands they need is like install Heroku Postgres app, pull the repo, auto-generate the data needed for that application, make the few small changes, run the integration test, and then they can push it up to a pull request. And so it's not exactly like one click, but it's like 5 steps that everyone is much more familiar with, especially if you're a standard Python Django dev, which all of our microservices are in Python Django. Everyone knows how to run tests, and so you just do like python manage test. And if you're familiar with Django, like you run that command 1,000,000 times a day. And so, like I said, set up the database, pull the repo, generate the local data, and then run, make your changes, run your test, push up, and make a pull request. And so there is a little bit more setup in order to get like the entire microservices constellation running, but generally speaking, it's not required to work to have the entire constellation booted up and running on your local dev machine in order to make features go live for because one team will consume the API from one particular microservice, and so as long as we can either fix the bug or make the changes to the API, then the other team can immediately start consuming those API changes. Yeah.
We've got one over here.
It looks like user and group management is internal to the tool. Is there any chance to integrate with an external directory or some other mechanism?
So I'll just repeat the question. I think you're asking that what we're doing here is managing Heroku accounts, and it is within the Heroku pass. And you're asking, is there any way to integrate with your team structures and other environments? So as we saw earlier, typically users at GitHub will have a GitHub team. And the short answer is we are working on that or SSO. So the first thing is, if you have a GitHub team, typically it's the same set of people. There's some subset of your GitHub team that is also your deployment team. Since Teams is just released, we're taking a look at that right now to see, okay, what's the overlap? And do we want to integrate with the actual team structure on GitHub? The second thing is for SSO, you can have unified login to the Heroku product, but that is correct. The teams are currently managed within Heroku itself, so it is a separate management thing.
Yeah, would like to know if you can have more than 3 steps in the pipelines. like having integration, staging, pre-production, and then production? Or is it limited to 3 steps only?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, on Heroku pipelines, would like to know if, so you had 3 steps, review apps, staging, production. If you have, for example, a pre-production between staging
Like a
and
development.
production, how do you do that?
Yes, you can optionally include another step. Some people call it dev, some people call it pre-prod, some people call it QA. We would like you to call it dev, but yes, you can add an additional column. It's really just for the purposes of making the process simple for this demo, but you can have more stages.
It's not limited to 3.
Yep. And by the way, this is all also supported via the CLI. So if you have some people who want to live in the command line interface, on a green and black console, they can also manage this with additional stages.
Cool. I think that's it if we don't have any other questions.
Yep. I will encourage everyone in the room at 11 o'clock upstairs is the dev keynote. You can see how all this stuff that all the features that Heroku is offering with continuous delivery can be used to develop against Salesforce orgs for Apex and Lightning apps. It's a very exciting demo.
And I'm sure Ike mentioned it earlier, but if you are interested in testing CI, just come talk to us afterwards, or hit us up on that Ask Heroku hashtag. Cool.
Great, thanks everyone.
Thank you.